My husband looked me in the eye on a Thursday evening and told me to be gracious when his professional contact came to our Christmas dinner. Said it the way he says everything important, casually, like the expectation was obvious and any reasonable person would already know it. Like I was the one who needed reminding of how to conduct myself. What Terrence did not know, what he could not have imagined in 6 years of underestimating me, was that I had already spent 3 weeks building a case that would void our prenuptial agreement, expose everything he had been hiding, and walk me out of this marriage with every dollar I was owed. He told me to be gracious. I was, perfectly, deliberately, dangerously gracious. Right up until I opened the door.
If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. It comes on a Tuesday. I am in the kitchen rinsing the breakfast dishes when the delivery alert buzzes on my phone. Priority mail requires signature. I dry my hands on the dish towel, the good linen one that Terrence's mother sent from Savannah 2 Christmases ago, and I go to the front door in my house slippers and sign the tablet the carrier holds out without really looking, and I carry the envelope inside. I set it on the kitchen counter next to what is left of my second cup of coffee, and that is when I see the name. The return address is handwritten in neat, deliberate cursive. Not printed, handwritten, the way people don't write things anymore unless they are putting effort into them. There is a hotel name on Peachtree Street below the name, but the name is what I am looking at, Simone. No last name, just Simone. And the envelope is addressed to Terrence. I stand at the counter and I look at that name and I feel the morning reorganize itself around it. The coffee goes cold. I don't notice. The small television in the kitchen is talking about traffic on I-285, and I hear none of that either. Here's what I know about my life in this moment. I am 38 years old. I have been married to Terrence Lawson for 6 years, and together with him for 8. We live in a 4-bedroom house in Buckhead that I selected, that I decorated, that I have maintained with the same level of quiet professional precision I once applied to 6-figure corporate events before Terrence asked me to stop working, and I agreed because I loved him and I believed him when he said it would be better for both of us. Terrence is a real estate development attorney at one of Atlanta's better-regarded firms. He is tall and he is polished, and he has a way of occupying a room that makes people pay attention without him having to ask. He is successful. He works late most nights, and on the occasions that he comes home at a reasonable hour, he is tired and distracted, and he is kind enough in the way of someone who means well, but stopped looking closely. He has not been looking closely at me in a long time. I know this. I have known it in the quiet, low-grade way you know things you are not ready to examine directly. You know it the way you know a drawer is sticking. You adjust, you work around it, you tell yourself you will deal with it later, and then later keeps not arriving. I look at the envelope for what feels like a long time, but is probably 3 minutes. Then I open it. Inside are 2 hotel receipts, printed and folded in thirds, and a handwritten note on cream-colored stationery with a thin gold border, the kind of stationery you buy at a paper boutique, not a grocery store. The kind of stationery that is chosen. The note says, "Can't wait for January. Miss you already." S. I read it twice. I fold the note back inside the receipts. I fold everything together and I slide it into the junk drawer beneath the phone chargers and the batteries and the rubber bands and the spare key to a car we no longer own. I close the drawer. I pour my cold coffee down the drain. I rinse the mug. I set it in the drying rack upside down the way I always do. Then I stand at the sink and I grip the edge of the counter with both hands and I breathe. I do not cry. What I feel instead is something colder and cleaner than crying. A stillness that settles into me like a stone dropping through water, still falling but no longer fighting the fall. That steadiness scares me more than anything else would have. Let me back up, because to understand this story, you need to understand the woman I was before I became the woman standing at that kitchen sink, and the woman I stopped being somewhere in between. I was good at my job. I say that plainly without apology, because it matters to the story, and because I spent too many years applying the same diminishing language to myself that the people around me used. I was not just competent, I was excellent. I was a senior corporate event director at one of Atlanta's most respected boutique firms. We handled events with real stakes attached to them. Product launches for companies whose names you would recognize. Hospital foundation galas that raise seven-figure sums in a single evening. Political fundraisers where the wrong centerpiece arrangement, I am only partly joking, could actually affect someone's career. I was the person clients called when they could not afford for anything to go wrong. I was the person who made sure it didn't. I met Terrence at one of those events, Real Estate Development Conference, Downtown Marriott Marquise, 2 levels of cocktail hour, live jazz quartet, approximately 300 people who all believed they were the most important person in the room. I had been there since 6 in the morning. By the time cocktail hour started, I had eaten exactly half a Kind bar I found in my bag and a single piece of passed salmon that I consumed while walking between the check-in station and the coat room. Terrence came up and asked if the salmon was any good. I told him honestly that I did not know. I had eaten it too fast to notice. He laughed. A real laugh, not a polite one. We talked for 4 minutes before I had to go manage a situation with the centerpiece lighting on the 2nd level. He found me at the end of the night after the last guest had gone, and I was coordinating breakdown with the venue staff. He asked for my card. I gave him one. He called the next morning. He was 36. I was 30. He had old Atlanta money on his mother's side and a sharp practical intelligence that he'd gotten from somewhere else. And he pursued me with a focused intensity that I later understood he applies to everything he decides to acquire. Reservations at Bacchanalia on a Tuesday. A weekend in Savannah where we walked the squares and he held my hand like it was something he had always meant to do. Flowers delivered to my office on a random Wednesday. Not roses, which would have been generic, but a hand-tied bunch of dahlias in burnt orange and deep plum, because he had listened when I mentioned once that I liked unusual colors. He made me feel chosen in the specific way that is most dangerous, not generally chosen, the way people feel at the beginning of any new relationship, but particularly chosen. Like I was the answer to something specific he had been looking for. We were engaged 14 months after we met. His mother organized the engagement party. His mother and his aunts and his mother's 2 best friends from their sorority organized much of the wedding, too, which at the time I experienced as a gift. I was busy, they were enthusiastic, and it felt like being welcomed into a family that had already decided to keep me. I understand it differently now. The people who plan your wedding are the people who decide what it will be. And what Terrence's family decided was that our wedding would reflect who he was and where he came from. And my job was to fit that frame gracefully. I was 29 when we got married. I was happy. The adjustments started slowly in the way they always do with people who are good at this. A gentle observation about a dress being a little casual for a firm dinner. Nothing harsh. Just a wondering, a mild suggestion that maybe my friend group, wonderful as they were, wasn't quite the network we needed to be cultivating at this stage in our careers. A comment delivered with affection about how the events industry was so unpredictable, so dependent on external circumstances, not really the kind of stable foundation that would serve us well long term. Each thing arrived individually. None of them seemed like very much on its own. And then, 19 months into our marriage, we had the conversation. We were at dinner. Good restaurant, good wine. The kind of dinner Terrence liked to have on the occasions when things were going well at work, and he wanted to celebrate without making a specific occasion of it. He set down his glass, and he looked at me across the table, and he said, in the gentlest possible voice, that he had been thinking about us, about what we were building. He said, "My salary is only going to grow from here. The partnership track is real, Deja. I'm going to make it happen. And your salary is good, don't get me wrong, but the hours you work, the stress of it, managing all those personalities and all those logistics, do you really want to be doing that at 40? At 45? When we have kids?" We had not yet discussed children in any specific way. He said, "What if you focused on us, on building the life that supports everything we're trying to do? I can give you that freedom." A lot of women would want that. He was not wrong that a lot of women would want that. He was wrong that I was one of them, or he chose not to find out, which amounts to the same thing. I said yes. I said it because I loved him, and because I believed him, and because I was 32 years old, and I had been taught, in the specific way that women like me get taught, that a good marriage requires sacrifice, and that sacrifice looks like generosity if you're doing it right. I gave 2 weeks' notice at my firm the following month. My director asked me 3 times if I was sure. I said yes each time. On my last day, she hugged me and whispered, "Come back whenever you're ready. The door is open." She meant it, I think. I thought about it for a long time afterward. That was 6 years ago. Now I fill my days in this Buckhead house that looks exactly the way Terrence wants it to look. Clean lines, neutral palette, the kind of interior that photographs well when his clients come for dinner and need to see evidence that this is a man who lives well and therefore can be trusted with large amounts of money. I cook meals that Terrence praises briefly and genuinely before his attention goes somewhere else. I host dinners for his colleagues and their partners, and I am very good at it. The right wines, the right flowers, the right conversation balance between engaging and forgettable. And I have learned to accept the particular polite distance that settles over a room when someone asks what I do, and the answer is that I take care of our home. Some of his colleagues' spouses are kind about it. Some of them are not unkind, but their eyes shift, just slightly, the way eyes shift when they are reclassifying you. I learned to stop noticing, or I learned to pretend I had. I wait until Terrence leaves for work the next morning. His car backs out of the driveway at 7:42. I am watching from the kitchen window with my coffee. I wait 5 more minutes. Old habit from years of event planning, always build in a buffer. And then I go to the junk drawer and I take out the envelope and I carry it to the kitchen island. I open my laptop. New browser window, private, no history. I type in the name from the note. Simone Garrett, Atlanta. She is not difficult to find. She has a LinkedIn profile that is current and complete, a bio page on the Forsyth Design Group website, and a mention in a Commercial Observer piece from 8 months ago about a mixed-use development project going up on Harrison Street in Midtown. The article includes a photograph of 3 people shaking hands at a groundbreaking ceremony. One of them is Terrence. Simone Garrett is 33 years old. She is a junior architect at Forsyth Design Group, which is one of 3 design and planning firms that have been working in a consortium with Terrence's development company on a major Midtown project that has been in progress for 2 years. The bio says she relocated to Atlanta from D.C. 18 months ago. She has been in professional contact with my husband since before she moved here. I look at her photograph for a while. She is beautiful in the composed, deliberate way of someone who has figured out exactly how she wants to be seen and has made that presentation consistent. She does not look like a woman who improvises. I close her profile and I open a new tab and I type in the hotel name from the return address. Then I open the receipts from the envelope. I look at the dates. I think about where Terrence told me he was on those dates. The math is very simple. I do it twice anyway, the way I always check numbers twice because precision matters. Here is what I feel. Not the shattering, floor, falling away grief I might have expected. Not the hot, shaking anger. What I feel instead is something colder. Something that arrives the way clarity arrives. Not comfortable, but clean. Like something that has been blurry for a very long time has finally resolved into focus. And the sharpness of the image is almost a relief after the blurring. I know what this is, and I know. This knowledge arrives quietly, the way the most important things sometimes do, without fanfare, that how I handle the next several weeks will determine the rest of my life. Not in a dramatic way, in a practical one, because I have 6 years of domestic labor in this house and 30% of a down payment from my grandmother's inheritance invested in it and a prenuptial agreement I signed without independent legal counsel, and if I make one wrong move in the wrong direction, all of that disappears. I put the receipts back in the envelope. I put the envelope in my bag, not the drawer. I want it with me. Then I open my email and I write to my mother. I tell her I need the name of a private investigator, someone trustworthy and discreet. I tell her it is important, and I tell her I will explain later. I hit send before I can think too carefully about what that message means, about what I am now doing, about the specific road I have just turned onto. Then I close the laptop and I make myself eat breakfast. Eggs scrambled with a little cream cheese the way my mother taught me. Toast. Half a grapefruit with the sections already cut. I wash the pan when I'm done. I wipe the counter. I refill my coffee. I go about my day. But everything is different now, and I know it. And somewhere underneath the practiced routine of my morning, I am already beginning to plan. My mother calls back within 40 minutes. She does not ask me what this is about. My mother is a woman who has lived long enough to know the difference between the kinds of trouble a person names and the kinds they can only gesture toward, and she knows me well enough to understand that if I am asking for an investigator without offering an explanation, the explanation is not one I am ready to give, and the investigator is urgent. She respects both of those things. What she says is, I know a woman your father's deacon used when he had a situation with a contractor 3 years ago. She used to be GBI. Now she's independent, discreet, smart. 3 women at Victory Baptist have also used her for different kinds of situations. And all 3 of them got what they needed without their business becoming anyone else's business. Her name is Renee Tatum. I'm going to text you her number right now. She texts it before we've even finished the call. Here is what you need to understand about why this matters. In my mother's world and in mine, discretion is not simply a preference. It is a form of survival. You do not let your difficulty become public knowledge before you are ready for it to be. Because in a community where reputation moves faster than facts, the story that arrives first is the one that sticks. You do not give anyone a reason to look at you with pity or judgment before you have done what you need to do. You handle your business privately, completely, and you do not emerge until you are ready to emerge from a position of strength. My mother understands this the way she understands most things, completely and without needing to explain it. I text Renee Tatum that same afternoon. Within 2 hours, we have a time and a location. Thursday morning, a bakery on Commerce Drive in Decatur, 10 o'clock. That evening, I tell Terrence I have a dentist appointment Thursday morning. He says, and turns the page of whatever he is reading. I go to bed that night, and I lie in the dark next to my husband, and I listen to him breathe, and I think about the hotel receipts in my bag. I think about Simone Garrett's handwriting on cream stationery. I think about the prenuptial agreement I signed 9 years ago. 6 years ago, I correct myself. 6 years ago, in a conference room at Terrence's firm with his attorney sitting across from me and my own attorney absent, because Terrence said it was just a formality and I believed him because I was 29 and I was in love, and I thought that trusting the person you were marrying was the same thing as protecting yourself. I have not thought about that document in 6 years. I think about it now, lying in the dark, and what I think is, I need to find it. I need to read every word. The bakery has been there since before the neighborhood changed. You can tell by the linoleum floor and the display case that runs the full length of one wall, and the chalkboard menu handwritten in colors that have faded slightly from the same hand, doing it for 20 years. The case is full of sweet potato pound cake and peach hand pies and a chess pie that the woman behind the counter tells me won a regional competition in 2019 and will again this year if anyone deserving is doing the judging. Renee Tatum is already at a corner table when I arrive. I will later understand that she is always already there, whatever the location, whatever the meeting. This is how she operates, checking the room before the other person arrives, understanding the exits and the sight lines and who is sitting near enough to overhear. She's 54, silver at her temples, natural hair close-cropped and clean. She's wearing a dark blazer over a burgundy turtleneck that I will later think of as her version of professional dress. Practical, precise, nothing that attracts attention. She has a cup of tea and a small leather notebook in front of her. She stands when I come in, extends her hand. She says, "Sit down." I sit. She looks at me with the direct, inventory-taking gaze of a woman who spent 20 years in law enforcement and has stopped pretending she is not assessing people when she is assessing people. It is not unkind. It is simply honest. She says, "What do you need this for?" And that question, the plainness of it, the lack of preamble or softening, is what does something to the composure I have been maintaining for 4 days, not breaks it, but opens a small door in it. I tell her everything, the envelope and the name on it, the hotel receipts and the note on cream stationery, the Googling I did, the LinkedIn profile, the Commercial Observer article, the photograph of Terrence at a groundbreaking with a woman who has been writing him handwritten notes from downtown hotels, the 6 years of marriage and the job I gave up and the account I am not authorized to access, and the slow, accumulating suspicion that has been living in the back of my chest for longer than I want to admit. And the prenuptial agreement. Renee listens the way good listeners listen, without interrupting, without nodding encouragingly at intervals, without making it about her reactions. She simply takes in what I am telling her. When I finish, she opens her notebook and picks up a pen. "Tell me about the prenup," she says. "What do you remember about the terms?" I tell her what I remember. That the terms favored Terrence heavily if I initiated the divorce, that my grandmother's inheritance contributed significantly to the down payment on the Buckhead house, but I was uncertain whether that was protected under the agreement, that I signed it without my own attorney present, and I have not read it since the day I signed it. She writes something down, 3 or 4 words in handwriting I cannot read from across the table. Then she looks up at me and she says, "Here is the most important thing I'm going to tell you. The moment Terrence suspects that you are building a case, anything, any smallest indication, he will get careful. He will change passwords. He will change patterns. He will move things around. Right now, from what you're describing, he has no idea. A man who has no idea is a man who is sloppy. Comfortable people get sloppy. We need his sloppiness. Can you go home and be the same wife you've been for 6 years? I think about 6 years of being that wife. I think about how practiced I am at it. I can do that, I say. Good. She closes the notebook. I'll start this week. Every few days, you'll get an encrypted message through a Proton Mail account. You need to set one up, something that has nothing to do with your name, or his name, or your address, or any password you've used for anything else. I'll walk you through it. She pauses. And before we meet again, I need you to find that prenuptial agreement and read every single page of it. Don't photograph it yet. Just read it. Bring me notes. She reaches for her tea. "You should order something," she says. "You look like you haven't been sleeping." She says it matter-of-factly, not with concern exactly, but with the practical attention of someone who understands that a person who isn't sleeping makes mistakes, and mistakes are expensive. I order a piece of sweet potato pound cake. I eat it slowly. It is very good. When I leave the bakery, I feel something I have not felt in a long time, like I am not handling this alone. Like there is someone in my corner who is good at exactly what this requires. It is not relief, not yet, but it is the first ingredient of relief. Renee is methodical in the way of someone who was trained to be methodical and then spent 20 years having that training confirmed by consequences. Her first update comes 5 days after our meeting. It arrives through the Proton Mail account I set up in my maiden name with a birthday that isn't mine and a recovery email that doesn't exist. I open it sitting in my car in the parking lot of a grocery store 2 miles from our house. On my phone with the Wi-Fi disabled because I am not doing any of this on the home network. She has confirmed a pattern. She has photographs. I look at them in my car with the engine off and the heater running, and I am very still. The photographs are clear. Terrence and a woman I recognize from the Forsyth Design Group website at the bar of the W Hotel Midtown. Late afternoon light through the windows. Sitting close in the easy way of people who have run out of the need to perform ease for each other. His hand is on the back of her chair, proprietary and relaxed. The timestamp says 2:44 in the afternoon on a Wednesday. On that Wednesday, Terrence told me he had back-to-back client calls until 5:30. The second photo is from a parking structure off Peachtree. The two of them standing next to Terrence's black Audi. They are not kissing. They are talking. But the way they are talking. Her hand on his lapel, his head tipped toward hers. The conversational architecture of two people with no daylight between them. Says more than kissing would have. I sit with those photographs for a while. Then I put my phone in the center console and I go do my grocery shopping because we are out of olive oil and coffee. And if I come home without them, Terrence will mention it, and I do not want Terrence mentioning anything right now. Renee's second update has credit card records. A card issued in Terrence's name, personal account, not the joint account I use for household expenses, not the business card for the firm, his own private card. The statement Renee obtained through a contact she does not identify reads like a different life than the one I am living in. Dinner at Quinoni, twice. A reservation at a lodge property in the North Georgia mountains during a weekend when Terrence told me he was at a development conference in Charlotte. A piece of jewelry from a jeweler on Peachtree Road. The description lists it as a pendant necklace, gold, custom. I look at that line item for a long time, not because of what it costs. It is not the cost. It is the effort, the specificity. You do not order a custom pendant for someone you are managing. You order it for someone you are thinking about. Renee's third update is a call. She never calls unless it is something that cannot be sent in a message, and I know this within the first 10 days of working with her. She says, "There's something else. Something you need to sit down for if you're not already." I am sitting at the kitchen island. Terrence is at work. I grip the edge of the counter anyway. She says, "Simone Garrett is also involved with Marcus Webb. I know that name immediately. 2 terms on the Atlanta City Council. Currently running for state senate in a race that has his face on yard signs in 3 different zip codes. Prominent, visible, married for 23 years to Patricia Webb, who was a federal prosecutor before she left practice to support his political career." Renee continues. Webb's office oversees the city contract review board that has approved 2 projects in the past 18 months that directly benefit Forsyth Design Group. Projects that benefit Terrence's development company as a downstream effect. Simone is listed as the design firm's point of contact on both of those contracts. I close my eyes. She's not just having an affair with your husband, Renee says. She's using both of them. Webb for political access and contract influence. Terrence for professional proximity and whatever advantage she's building in the development pipeline. I have photographs of her and Webb at a restaurant in Buckhead November 3rd. And footage of her entering a parking structure connected to his campaign office on 2 separate evenings, both after 9 p.m. I open my eyes. And neither of them knows about the other, I say. Renee says, "Webb is starting to wonder. That's actually why I'm calling now instead of waiting for the next update. I want you to start thinking about what you want to do with this." 2 days after that call, Renee sends me a set of text screenshots. They are between Simone and Terrence from a period 8 months ago, pulled from an account with weak security. Simone uses the same password across multiple platforms and does not have 2-factor authentication on most of them, which Renee describes as remarkable for a woman this careful about everything else. The messages read like a plan. Simone telling Terrence she intends to end things with Marcus Webb once the Senate campaign gets underway. Too much scrutiny, too much risk. Terrence responding, Take your time. We don't need to rush. The language between them is careful. The language of two people who believe they are the smartest people managing this situation. I build my next move around those messages. I spend a day and a half constructing assumptions on top of them. Simone has chosen Terrence. Simone intends to separate herself from Marcus Webb once the timing is right. Terrence is the endgame, and Marcus Webb is a complication she is in the process of resolving. I am wrong. Renee calls me on a Thursday afternoon, and the first thing she says is, I need to correct something. Those messages are from March, she says, 8 months ago. And since March, the contact between Simone and Webb has not decreased. It has increased. 4 confirmed meetings in the past 6 weeks, 2 of them overnight at a property in Midtown that is registered under a corporate name. There is no indication that Simone has ended or reduced anything. She told Terrence she would, and then she simply did not. And Terrence doesn't know, I say. Renee says, Terrence has no idea. I sit with that for a full minute. Not because the betrayal is a surprise, I am past surprise, but because the picture it creates is more complicated than I had drawn, and I built 2 days of planning on a foundation that is not there. I am frustrated with myself. I know better than to draw a line between 2 points before I have all the points. I call Renee back an hour later. I need to think through the approach again, I say. She says, I figured you might. Come back to Decatur when you're ready. We'll rebuild it from the real picture instead of the assumed one. I go 2 mornings later. We sit in the same corner of the same bakery, and I order the chess pie this time, and we spend 2 hours going through what is actually true versus what I had assumed and what strategy serves the actual facts. What I come to understand in that conversation is this. Simone Garrett is running both men simultaneously with no intention of choosing either of them. She is using Terrence for professional proximity to a development pipeline that advances her firm's revenue. She is using Marcus Webb for political access that generates contract approvals that benefit her firm's positioning. She considers neither of these men a long-term investment. She considers both of them useful for as long as they are useful. The text messages Renee pulled from her phone, the ones between Simone and Webb, describe Terrence as a useful contact and a source of proximity. She does not love my husband. She is managing him, and she is managing him in almost exactly the same way my husband has been managing me. With warmth deployed strategically, with careful shaping of what he sees and what he doesn't, with the confidence of someone who believes the other person will not look too closely. I think about that for a moment. Then I say to Renee, I need Marcus Webb in that room at Christmas dinner. Renee looks at me steadily. That's a big move, she says. If he goes to Simone, everything falls apart. I tell her why I don't think he will. She listens. Then she nods slowly. All right, she says, but be careful how you approach him. Don't threaten. Don't moralize. Give him facts and a way to act on them that serves his interest. Men like that need to feel like they're making the decision. I understand that, I say. I have spent 6 years making sure the men in my life feel like they are making decisions. Renee looks at me for a moment. She says, let's get started. Terrence is at a firm retreat in Athens on a Sunday in early November. He will be gone until Monday evening. I wait until his car has been gone for 2 hours. Then I go to the closet in the home office. His office now, the room I ceded to him 3 years ago when he said he needed more workspace. And I go to the back where the fireproof box sits on the high shelf behind his golf bag. I know the combination. I have known it for 4 years. I found it written in the back of a leather planner when I reorganized this room as a birthday gift, and he never changed it, because Terrence has always operated under the assumption that I am not paying close enough attention to require him to update his security measures. He has always found my attention charming, limited, and easy to manage. I dial the combination. I open the box. Inside, beneath insurance documents and stock certificates and a copy of his will, is the prenuptial agreement. 31 pages tabbed and paper clipped in a manila folder with a handwritten label in the handwriting of an attorney I was meeting for the first and only time on the day I signed this. I carry it to the kitchen island. I make a cup of coffee. I sit down. I begin to read. It takes 40 minutes. The language is dense and deliberate in the specific way that legal documents are dense and deliberate when someone wants you to abandon comprehension without understanding that you are abandoning it. Sections that seem to say one thing and then, 6 clauses deeper, reveal they meant something else. References to other sections that reference other sections still. The kind of drafting that is impressive only if you are the one it protects. The terms are exactly as bad as I feared, and worse in specifics. If I file for divorce within 7 years of the marriage, I receive a fixed settlement of $60,000. Nothing else. No equity claim on the Buckhead house, which is titled solely in Terrence's name, despite the fact that my grandmother's inheritance, inherited at 27 and held in a personal account, funded 31% of the down payment. No alimony. No portion of Terrence's retirement accounts or the investment portfolio he has been building for the duration of our marriage. No share of the development company interests, the firm equity, any of it. $60,000. 6 years. Every dinner I cooked, and every event I hosted, and every acquaintance I cultivated, and every trip I organized, and every time I made myself smaller, and every career connection I let lapse because Terrence said I didn't need it. All of that, in this document, is worth $60,000, and the implicit understanding that I should be grateful for the structured exit. He designed it to leave me with nothing. And then I reach page 19. I almost miss it. I am tired by this point, not from the reading, but from the particular exhaustion of understanding what you signed, and my attention is flagging slightly. But something in the phrasing of the second-to-last paragraph of Section 12B slows me down, and I read it again, and I read it a third time. In the event that adultery by Terrence Bartholomew Lawson is proven to the satisfaction of a court of competent jurisdiction, all conditions and limitations set forth in this agreement shall be null and void, and all marital assets shall be divided according to the laws of the state of Georgia. I sit very still. Proven adultery. I think about Renee's photographs. I think about the credit card records. I think about the hotel receipts in the original envelope, still in my bag, with their timestamps and the downtown hotel address, and the name in careful cursive on cream-colored stationery. I read the clause 4 times. Then I go to my phone and I photograph every page of the document. Every single page, front and back, clearly lit, in focus. I email the photographs to the Proton Mail account and to a new secure account I have set up for this purpose only. Then I put the prenuptial agreement back in the folder back in the box back on the shelf, the combination dialed to the same position it was in when I found it. I close the closet door. I go back to the kitchen and I wash my coffee cup. I stand at the kitchen window and I look out at the backyard. The rosemary bush by the fence that I planted 3 years ago, the flagstone patio Terrence had installed because he liked the look of it, the 2 chairs no one ever sits in, and I feel something settle into place in my chest. Not peace, not yet, but direction. A clear sense of exactly what I am dealing with and exactly what I need to do about it. I get out my phone and I call Constance Okafor. I found her through the State Bar of Georgia directory, filtered by practice area and years of experience, cross-referenced against online reviews in attorney forums. She has practiced family law in Atlanta for 22 years. She does not lose at trial. She has a reputation, according to 3 separate sources I found, for preparing cases so thoroughly that the opposing party typically settles before anyone has to go to court. She takes my call on the second ring. We talk for 45 minutes. When I hang up, I know that Monday morning, whatever Monday morning it turns out to be, she will be ready to file. It happens on a Thursday evening. Terrence comes home earlier than usual, before 7, which has become rare enough that I register it when it happens, and he is in a good mood. The specific good mood that comes from something going right at work, when a deal or a client or a piece of professional news has confirmed what he believes about himself. He loosens his tie in the foyer and comes to find me in the kitchen, where I am finishing the last steps of a white bean soup with kale and sausage, and he leans against the counter with the ease of a man who has had a good day and has come home to a kitchen that smells right and a wife who will listen. He says, "I want to talk to you about the Christmas dinner. We do a holiday dinner every December. It started small. 4 couples, a long table, a reason to bring out the good china, and has become, over the years, a more formal event. Terrence's colleagues, select professional contacts, partners and their spouses, people he is cultivating or maintaining. I plan it for 6 weeks and execute it with the precision of someone who did this professionally for 8 years. It is always good." Terrence accepts the compliments for it without redirecting them. He says, "I want to include Simone Garrett this year. I keep my hands on the spoon." "You remember her from the Harrison Street groundbreaking," he says. "She's been an incredible partner on that project, and she's going to be in town over Christmas. It would be a good professional gesture. And honestly, she's someone we should be cultivating for the long term. She's going places." I think about the W Hotel Midtown at 2:44 in the afternoon on a Wednesday. I think about the custom pendant receipt. I think about page 19 of the prenuptial agreement. I say, "Of course, that sounds like a nice idea." He looks at me with the slight, satisfied surprise of a man who prepared for a more complicated reaction and did not need to use his preparation. I add, carefully, "I was also thinking of inviting Adrian and Deshawn. They moved here from Charlotte in the spring, and they don't have any family nearby." It's their first Christmas in Atlanta. His expression shifts by a small and specific degree. "This is a professional dinner, Deja," he says. "It's not really the context for that, but inviting his girlfriend is the context." I don't say that. What I say is, "I understand. I just thought since we'll have extra space at the table anyway." He says, "I need this dinner to do a specific thing. I need Simone to feel welcomed into our professional circle. She's going to be a long-term relationship for us, and I need you to be gracious about it. Can you do that?" Gracious. That word. He says it the way he says things he considers self-evident, with the particular patience of a man who is confident he is not being unreasonable. I smile. "Of course," I say. "I'll make everything perfect." He nods, pours himself a glass of water, takes it to the living room. I turn back to the soup. Adrienne is coming, I think. She just doesn't know it yet, and she won't be the only guest Terrence isn't expecting. I reach for my phone and I start making a list. I reach out to Marcus Webb through an anonymous Proton Mail account, brief and factual. No emotion, no threats. I tell him I have information regarding Simone Garrett's activities that directly implicates his office in what may be improper conduct related to the city contract review process. I tell him I'm not a journalist. I tell him I have documentation, and I am willing to share it with the right person. He responds within 6 hours. The response does not come from Marcus. It comes from a professional email address. I look up immediately. Patricia Webb, listed as a legal consultant on the Georgia Attorney Directory, former Assistant United States Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia. She writes, "Who are you and what is this about?" No question mark. A statement in the form of a question, which I will later understand, is very much Patricia's mode. I sit with my phone for 10 minutes before I respond. I had planned to stay anonymous longer, but this is Patricia Webb, not Marcus, and Patricia Webb was a federal prosecutor, and she is already in this, which means my window for anonymity is already closing. I write back. "My name is Deja Lawson. My husband is Terrence Lawson at Lawson and Greer Development. Simone Garrett has been in a personal relationship with my husband for approximately a year, while simultaneously using her access to your husband's office to benefit her firm's contract approvals. I have documented evidence of both. I would like to speak with you directly. I hit send. She calls the next morning at 10 o'clock exactly. Her voice is composed in the way of someone who spent years in federal courtrooms and never stopped carrying that composure with her after she left. She speaks in complete sentences. She asks specific questions. She does not. Patricia listens without interrupting. Then she says, "I would like Marcus and me to attend your dinner." Not, "Would it be all right if we came?" Not, "We'd be happy to join." She says it as a statement of intent, and I understand that this is how Patricia operates. She identifies what needs to happen, and she says it plainly. I tell her, "I think that's exactly right." She says, "I need to ask you something directly." I say, "Ask." She says, "What is your goal for this evening? What specifically do you want to have accomplished when it's over?" I tell her the truth. I want Simone Garrett in a room where she cannot control the story. I want Terrence to understand, in front of witnesses, the full scope of what he has done and what it means for the legal proceeding I am initiating. I want documented evidence of adultery that will hold up in court and void the prenuptial agreement. And I want him to receive divorce papers before the night is over. Patricia is quiet for a moment. Then we drive. He hands it to me without hesitation, without registering the small irony of this, because he has never registered any of the small ironies of this. I sign the receipt. He puts his arm around my shoulders as we walk out. He says, "This is why I count on you. You always know the right thing." I say, "I try." He says, "Most women would make this into something. You know? They'd get weird about it, get jealous. You've always been secure in who we are. That's rare." We reach the car. I get in. I set the gift bag carefully on the floor of the back seat. I put on my seatbelt. I say, "I'm glad you feel that way." He pulls out of the parking lot. He turns on the radio. He is already thinking about something else. I look out the window at the December afternoon and I think about the candle set and the woman who will unwrap it in my dining room in 2 weeks. And I think about page 19 of the prenuptial agreement. And I feel nothing except very, very clear. She calls me a second time, 4 days before Christmas. She is the kind of person who prepares for every contingency and wants to verify that the people she is working with are doing the same. This call is a logistics check. She asks me, "Who will be present?" I tell her, "My friend Adrian, who has known everything for 2 weeks and is there as a witness and a support. Adrian's husband, Deshawn. Renee Tatum, who will be in position outside the building and available if needed, and who has organized and time-stamped the full chain of evidence. And Constance Okafor, my attorney, who's been briefed completely and will file the divorce papers Monday morning at 9. Patricia listens to all of this. Then she says, "What's your contingency if Simone chooses to leave before you've completed the presentation?" I have thought about this. She won't, I say. Her instinct in any high-pressure situation is going to be to stay in the room and manage it. She's not a person who retreats. She's a person who tries to control the narrative from inside whatever is happening because she's better at that than she is at damage control from the outside. She'll stay, Patricia says. You're right. That's exactly how she operates. There is something in her voice, a flatness, a familiarity, that tells me Patricia has been watching Simone Garrett from closer range and for longer than 11 weeks. I ask her carefully, "Are you all right?" There's a pause on the line, long enough that I wonder if I overstepped. She says, "I have been married for 23 years. I made a deliberate choice to step away from my legal career to support something I believed in. I did that willingly. I don't regret it. What I did not agree to, what was not part of the agreement, was being used as a structural convenience, as cover, as a reason someone else could operate without scrutiny." She stops. "I'm sorry," I say. She says, Don't be. I would rather know. I have 3 children. I need to understand the full picture of what I'm dealing with and who I'm dealing with. She pauses. She says, and what kind of man I have been covering for. I don't say anything. Sometimes the right response to someone else's real pain is to simply let them have it. After a moment, she says, make sure the documentation is organized and sequenced clearly. If I'm going to be a witness, I want to be a useful one. I tell her it will be. It will be. I have organized things my entire adult life. The one advantage of being underestimated by everyone in the room is that no one knows what you've been building. Christmas Eve. Terrence has a firm gathering in the afternoon, a partner lunch that goes long, as these things do, and he won't be home until 9 or later. I have the house to myself from 2 o'clock. I cook. I start with the short ribs because they need the most time. I brown them in the Dutch oven in batches, letting each side develop a proper crust before I move to the next, the way my grandmother taught me. Don't rush the browning, she always said. That's where the flavor lives. Then wine, stock, fresh thyme, a whole head of garlic halved crosswise, the bay leaves from the plant on the windowsill, into the oven at 325 degrees, low and slow. Then the sweet potato soufflé, which is the dish I make that reminds me most specifically of being a child in my mother's kitchen at the holidays, the smell of it baking like a sense memory I can access without trying. Brown butter in the bottom of the dish, mashed sweet potato with nutmeg and a little orange zest, and just enough sugar. Whipped egg whites folded in at the end, into the oven beside the ribs. Collard greens with smoked turkey, the way my grandmother made them. Cornbread in the cast iron skillet I have had since I was 24. It was the first kitchen item I bought for myself after I moved into my first apartment, and it has survived every subsequent move and one marriage, and it will outlive all of it. I work through the afternoon. My hands remember what to do. My grandmother taught me that a well-set table is a form of authority. She did not say this in theoretical terms. She said it at Thanksgiving when I was 11, watching her press the tablecloth with a travel iron because the dining room wasn't big enough for a regular ironing board, and she said, when you feed people well, Deja, they know you're in charge. They just think they got dinner. I think about her tonight. I set the table at 8 o'clock, 9 place settings. The good china, white with a thin gold band, formal without being cold. Crystal water glasses that catch the light from the overhead fixture. The silver candlesticks I polished last week with a cotton cloth and a patience I did not know I had in me. I fold the napkins into precise fans. I step back. It is beautiful. After I am done, after everything is covered and resting and the kitchen is clean, I go to the living room and I sit on the couch in the dark. I do not turn on the television. I do not put on music. I sit in the quiet of the house that I have taken care of for 6 years, and I let myself feel all of it. The grief for the marriage I thought I was in. Not the marriage as it turned out to be, but the one I believed in. You can grieve a thing that was never real. The unreality doesn't make the grief less. The anger, not hot anymore. More like a long, low-burning coal, steady and reliable. Something I have learned to use instead of being used by it. The exhaustion of performing contentment so thoroughly and for so long that there were months where I forgot I was performing it. I sit with all of that for an hour. Then I go to bed. I do not sleep well. Sometime around 3 in the morning, I get up and I go to the kitchen and I check the short ribs. They are perfect. They will be perfect tomorrow. They do not need me. And I stand at the kitchen window and I look at the winter dark of the backyard, and I think about all the mornings I have stood at this window and looked out at this yard and felt like someone waiting for their life to start. Tomorrow, it starts. I go back to bed. Terrence comes into the dining room at 11 in the morning carrying his coffee and still wearing the cashmere robe I gave him 2 Christmases ago, and he stops and counts the place settings. 9. He counts them again. Who else is coming? He says. I do not look up from the counter where I'm reviewing my cooking timeline, printed on a single sheet of paper and organized by 30-minute intervals the way I learned to do for corporate events. Adrienne and Deshawn, I say. I know you said the timing wasn't ideal, but it's Christmas, and they're new to the city, and I couldn't leave them with nowhere to go. He exhales, the measured exhale of a man who is weighing the cost of the argument against the cost of letting it go. Just make sure she understands the context, he says. This is a professional dinner, not a social gathering. I don't want her spending the evening talking about things that don't matter. Of course, I say. I'll make sure everything stays on track. He takes his coffee back to the bedroom. He will spend the next 2 hours getting ready. Shower, shave, the careful choice of what to wear, more care than he takes on ordinary days, the care of a man who has someone specific he wants to impress tonight. I text Adrienne at 11:15. On schedule. Be here by 4. She responds in 30 seconds. Deshawn is already in the car. See you at 3:45. I text Patricia Webb's number. Confirm twice this time. Check digit by digit. With the confirmed time for arrival. 6:25. Wait for my signal. She responds. Confirmed. I text Renee. Position by 5:30. Renee responds, already on my way. I put my phone face down on the counter and I go back to cooking. By 2 o'clock, the short ribs are resting under foil. The sweet potato soufflé has been made and waits to go into the oven at 5. The collard greens are done. The cornbread batter is ready in the skillet, and I have arranged the evidence portfolio on the sideboard in the dining room. 9 tabbed sections, each one dated, labeled, and sequenced clearly, the way you organize a client presentation when everything needs to land in the right order. Terrence comes out of the bedroom at 3 in a forest green blazer and charcoal trousers. He smells like the expensive cologne I gave him last birthday. He looks handsome. He always looks handsome when he makes an effort. He glances at the table. He looks at me. He says, "You've outdone yourself." I say, "I wanted tonight to be special." I mean it in a way he cannot understand yet. Adrienne arrives at 3:42. She walks in and hugs me and holds me for an extra second and doesn't say anything with words. She doesn't have to. 11 years of friendship means she can hold an entire conversation in a hug. Deshawn shakes my hand and gives me a look that says, "We're here. Whatever you need." These are the people I should have been cultivating for 6 years. These are my people. And Terrence sat across the table from that truth for the entire length of our marriage and saw it as a social liability. By 5:30, the cornbread is in the oven and the soufflé is golden, and the house smells like the best version of what a home can smell like on a cold December evening. Terrence is in the living room with Adrienne and Deshawn, making careful small talk, maintaining the performance of the gracious host with colleagues of Deja, the way I have maintained performances for his circles for 6 years. The doorbell rings at 6 o'clock exactly. Terrence is already moving when the bell rings. I hear his footsteps change, quicker, lighter, the footsteps of someone whose body has registered an event before his mind has finished processing it. I stay in the kitchen. I hear the door open. I hear his voice become something warmer and looser than the voice he uses with me. "Simone," he says. "I'm glad you made it." Her voice is warm and measured and precisely pitched. Of course. Merry Christmas. I dry my hands and I walk into the foyer. She is what the photographs suggested and a little more. Tall. Natural hair pinned up in an elegant twist, no pieces out of place. A deep green wrap dress that fits in the way clothes fit when they are selected for a specific body by someone who knows what they are doing. She is holding a bottle of wine and a small potted plant, a fiddle leaf fig in a ceramic pot with a thin gold band around the base. The kind of hostess gift that says, "I know the rules of this and I follow them better than most people." She finds me immediately when she looks up. Her eyes are warm and direct and, for just a fraction of a second, so brief I might have invented it, assessing. She says, "You must be Deja. This home is absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much for having me." I take the wine. I take the plant. I say we are so glad she could join us, and I smile, and there is nothing in my face to read except genuine hospitality. I am very good at this part. Terrence takes her coat without being asked. I carry the plant to the dining room windowsill. I note that Terrence has still not taken my coat from me in 4 years without being specifically requested. I note it and set it aside. We move to the table. Simone is charming in the way of someone who has worked at it until it became automatic, warm enough to make people feel seen, specific enough in her compliments to seem attentive, funny in a controlled way that invites others to be funny in return. She asks Adrienne and Deshawn about their move from Charlotte and listens to the answer with the posture of genuine interest. She compliments the table setting and the candles and the smell coming from the kitchen. She accepts the first glass of wine with the easy grace of someone who is never uncomfortable about being received. Then she turns to me. She says, "Terrence tells me you have a background in corporate events. I find that fascinating." She says fascinating the way people say fascinating when they mean limited. I say, "I did. I loved it." She tilts her head. The picture of thoughtful encouragement. "Do you miss it?" "I did," I say. "For a while. I've actually been thinking about going back." She says, "You absolutely should. It would be a waste not to. A woman with your organizational talent," she gestures at the table, "should be putting it to work. A woman with your organizational talent, an almost compliment that manages to imply the word only." I think about the senior coordinator title and the events that ran perfectly and the director who said, "The door is open whenever you're ready." I say, "Thank you." I think you're right. I refill her water glass. I check the clock. 6:17. Dinner continues. The food is excellent. I know it is because I made it, because I have been making food this well for 6 years for an audience that received it as a baseline expectation. And tonight I made it knowing it would be the last time I cooked in this capacity, and so I made it perfectly. Simone has second helping of the short ribs. She says, "Deja, this is remarkable." I mean that. I say, "I'm glad you're enjoying it." She says, "Really, you should think about doing this professionally. Catering or private chef work, some people make very good money." The table goes quiet for just a moment. Adrienne sets down her fork. Deshawn takes a sip of his water. I say, "That's an interesting idea." And then I check the clock again. 6:20. I excuse myself to the kitchen. My hands are not shaking. I notice this, and I am grateful for it. I go to the kitchen and I take out my phone and I pull up the contact I saved for Marcus Webb 3 days ago. The number his assistant texted to the Proton Mail account, confirmed upon receipt, saved carefully. And I open the pre-written message and I tap send. The screen shows a red exclamation point. Undeliverable. I look at the number. I look at it digit by digit. Somewhere between receiving it and saving it, I transposed a 7 and a 1. The number I have been holding in my phone for 3 days is not Marcus Webb's contact number. It is someone else's number entirely. I have 4 minutes, maybe 5, before the timing becomes a problem. I do not panic. I have never once in 20 years of event management allowed a logistics problem to become a panic, because panic is the enemy of solutions, and I've always been better at solutions than I am at panic. I open Renee's number. She answers on the first ring. "I need Webb's correct number," I say quietly, my back to the doorway, facing the window. I transposed it. "What do you have?" She reads it to me without asking for any explanation. 7 digits steady. I save it. I dial immediately. He answers on the second ring. His voice is low, already careful. "We're in the lobby," he says, before I have said anything. Patricia wanted to be in position early. I breathe once, fully. "Come up now," I say. "Use the elevator on the left. I'll be at the door." I put the phone in my pocket. I press both palms flat on the counter. I count to 4. Then I take the cornbread out of the oven, set it on the rack, pick up the cloth to wipe a non-existent spill, and I walk back into the dining room. Before dessert, I say brightly, "I have a small surprise." Terrence looks up. Simone looks up. She looks at me the way she has been looking at me all evening, warmly, assessingly, trying to locate something she cannot quite find. She's been in this house for over an hour, and she has not been able to find anything in me to worry about. And that inability has been making her slightly more careful, slightly more deliberate, slightly more present. She is smart. She knows something is in the room that she has not identified. She is right. I walk to the front door, and I open it. Marcus Webb is in the hallway. He is taller than he photographs, and he is in a dark wool overcoat, and he is containing something. You can see it in his jaw, in the set of his shoulders, in the specific quality of his stillness. He has been in the lobby of this building for 25 minutes, and he has spent those 25 minutes deciding how to carry what he knows into this room. He has made his decision. He is carrying it the way a man carries something he intends to put down precisely, once he knows exactly where to set it. Behind him, one step back, is Patricia. Patricia Webb is wearing a deep burgundy dress and a structured blazer over it, her hair close and natural, her posture the posture of a woman who has spent decades in rooms where other people held power and decided, somewhere along the way, to stop finding that intimidating. She is carrying a small clutch, and she is wearing the expression of someone who has already decided what this evening will and will not be, and who is at peace with both parts of that decision. She meets my eyes before Marcus does. She nods. I step back. They come in. The sound of their footsteps in the foyer carries into the dining room before they do, and I see Terrence half stand before he has fully registered why. The body moving faster than the mind in the presence of something it hasn't processed. His expression in that half second, open, inquiring, the expression of a man who is confident enough in his world that an unexpected sound in his foyer produces curiosity rather than alarm, is one I will remember for a long time. "Councilman Webb," he starts, coming around the corner into the foyer. "I didn't know you and Deja were—" He stops. Because in that same moment, Simone has turned in her chair to see who has arrived. And the moment she sees Marcus Webb standing in the foyer of this dining room with his wife behind him, every piece of the performance she has maintained all evening leaves her face at once, not slowly, all at once. Her wine glass stays where it is. Her hand stays where it is. She has simply gone still, the way something goes still when it has been caught. "Come in," I say. "I'm so glad you could join us." Patricia touches my arm briefly as she passes me. A small, deliberate gesture. I understand it. I close the front door. "Everyone," I say, "please stay where you are. There are a few things I want to share before we move on to dessert." I go to the sideboard. I open the leather portfolio I placed there this morning. 9 tabbed sections, each one labeled, each one dated, each one organized in the sequence that tells the story most clearly. I built this the way I built event run books for difficult clients. Everything in the right order, nothing left to chance, nothing that requires explanation because the explanation is already there. I do not raise my voice. I do not perform anything. What I am is clear. And I have learned, over 20 years of managing complex logistics in high-pressure environments, that clarity is more powerful than volume. I say, I want to thank everyone for being here. I know this is not a conventional Christmas dinner, but I think what I'm about to share will make it clear why I needed everyone in the same room at the same time. Terrence says, "Deja, what is this?" Not a question. The same statement as question energy Patricia uses, but coming from a different place. Not authority, but the beginning of alarm. I say, "I'm going to ask you to let me finish." He starts to stand. Patricia Webb says, from her seat at the far end of the table, "Sit down, Terrence." He sits. I don't think he fully processed why he obeyed. He just did. I open the first tab. Renee took these photographs, I say, sliding the prints to the center of the table. I hired her 6 weeks ago after I found hotel receipts addressed to my husband with another woman's name on them. I wanted to understand what I was actually dealing with before I made any decisions. Terrence is looking at the photographs. The W Hotel lobby, the parking structure, the restaurant. Each one time-stamped, each one cross-referenced in the margin notes with what Terrence told me he was doing at that time. I did the margin notes myself. I wanted his lie and the reality to be visible on the same page. He is quiet. His face is doing something complicated. Not the shock of a man who has been discovered for the first time, but the particular expression of a man who thought his discovery was impossible and is recalibrating. I slide the credit card statement to the table. This is a personal card in Terrence's name, I say. I am not an authorized user. These charges document dinners, overnight stays, and a piece of custom jewelry purchased at a jeweler on Peachtree Road. None of these purchases were ever mentioned to me. I'll let the dates and the receipts speak for themselves. Simone has not moved. She is very still in her chair, the stillness of someone who is calculating options and finding fewer of them than she expected. I look at Marcus Webb now. I want to be clear about your position in this, I say. What I have connects your name to Simone's professional activities, specifically to the contract review process for 2 Forsyth Design Group projects. I am not here to speak to what happened between you and Simone personally. That is for you and Patricia to address in your own way. What I have is this. I open the second tab and I slide 3 pages to Marcus's end of the table. These are text messages sent from Simone's phone to yours over a period of 6 months. They were obtained by my investigator through a third party. They document that Simone was aware of your oversight role on the City Contract Review Board. They document that she treated your relationship as part of her professional strategy. Marcus picks up the pages. He reads. He is very still. He reads the third page. He sets it down. He looks at the tablecloth for a moment in the way of someone who is resorting things they thought they understood. He says, "You told me it was personal, that it had nothing to do with the contracts." He is talking to Simone. She says, "Marcus." He says, "I asked you directly, specifically." His voice is not loud. It is the voice of a man who has represented himself in rooms with difficult people for 20 years and who knows that the most dangerous thing he can do right now is lose his composure. He is not losing it. He is very close, but he is not losing it. Simone says, "These messages are being taken out of," Adrian says very quietly. "They have timestamps." Simone looks at Adrian. Adrian looks back at her with the particular expression of a woman who drove here today specifically to bear witness and intends to do it thoroughly. I continue. I reach for the final document. "This is our prenuptial agreement," I say, setting it in front of Terrence. "I signed it 6 years ago without independent legal counsel, which my attorney believes creates grounds for challenge on its own. But I want to draw your attention to page 19. I wait while he finds it. I say, in the event of proven adultery by Terrence Bartholomew Lawson, all conditions and limitations of this agreement shall be null and void, and marital assets shall be divided according to Georgia law." The room is quiet. I look at my husband. I say, "I spent 6 years cooking your meals and hosting your dinners and introducing myself as your wife. I did all of that well because it's the only way I know how to do things. And while I was doing it, you were describing me to Simone Garrett as someone too small to notice, too manageable to be concerned about." He opens his mouth. "I was managing this dinner," I say, "every detail of it, the guest list, the timing, the documentation. I wanted you to see all of it at the same time, in front of witnesses, so that there would be no ambiguity afterward about what happened in this room tonight." I reach under the sideboard and I retrieve the envelope. "Monday morning," I say, "my attorney files. Her name is Constance Okafor. She has the full evidence package. Given the proof of adultery, the prenuptial agreement is void, and we proceed under Georgia marital property law. I set the envelope in front of him. He stares at it. Simone stands up. She doesn't make a speech. I think part of me had expected a speech. Simone Garrett has been poised and fluent all evening, and she is the kind of person who, under pressure, typically reaches for words. But what I see when she stands is not the composure of someone reaching for words. It is the face of someone whose specific calculation, the one she has been running for 18 months, has just produced an output she did not prepare for. She says, "This is not what it looks like." Nobody answers. She picks up her clutch from the back of the chair. She looks at Terrence. Something crosses her face. Not guilt. Something more like the look a chess player gives a board when they see how badly they've been outplayed. A moment of pure recognition before the expression closes down. She does not say anything to him. She looks at Marcus Webb for a moment. He does not look back at her. He is looking at the table. She walks out. Her heels are quick on the hardwood, decisive, not panicked. She's not the kind of woman who panics. And then the front door opens and closes, and she is gone. The silence that follows is the kind that has weight to it. Marcus Webb stands slowly. He picks up the pages from his end of the table. He looks at them for a moment, then he folds them once and puts them in the inside pocket of his blazer. And there is something in that gesture, deliberate, careful, that tells me he has already decided what he is going to do with this. He looks at Patricia. She looks at him. She stands. She comes to me. She is not hurried. She moves the way she has moved all evening, with the quiet authority of someone who has decided what she is and is not going to do, and who does not require anyone else's permission. She stops beside me. She says, low enough that only I can hear, "My attorney will contact yours this week. The contract review materials are already documented. This will move quickly." She pauses. She says, "You handled tonight exactly right." I say, "I hope it gives you what you need." She says, "It gives me the beginning of what I need. The rest is mine to deal with." She looks at me for a moment with the look of one woman taking inventory of another. She says, "Don't let anyone tell you that what you did tonight was vindictive. You protected yourself with the only tools available to you. That's not vindictive. That's competent." Then she goes to the door and Marcus follows her, and in the hallway I hear her voice, precise and even, beginning a conversation that is not for me to hear. Adrienne is at my side before I realize she has moved. She doesn't say anything. She just stands next to me. Deshawn is quietly clearing the far end of the table. Terrence has not moved. I pull out a chair and I sit down across from him. He looks like he is aged. Not dramatically, not the way it happens in movies where grief arrives cinematically, but in the smaller, more truthful way that real exhaustion settles into a face. He looks like a man who used up something tonight that he will not easily replace. He says, "When did you know?" 6 weeks ago, I say. He says, "And you?" I say. "I planned this dinner from the moment I decided I wasn't going to be managed out of my own life." He is quiet. He says, "I didn't think of it that way, the managing." I say, "I know. That's what made it possible." He says, "I'm sorry. I know it doesn't." "I know," I say. "I know it doesn't fix it." He picks up his coat from where he draped it over the back of his chair hours ago, at the beginning of the evening, when this was still a dinner he controlled. He stands. He goes to the door. He turns once, his hand on the doorknob. He says, "This is your home." "It has always been my home," I say. "I just had to prove it." The door closes. I sit at the table I set this morning. The good china. The silver candlestick still burning. The wine Simone brought still open on the sideboard, which I will never drink because some ironies are more than sufficient as observations. The fiddle leaf fig on the windowsill in its ceramic pot, which I will keep because I didn't choose it, and it is a good plant, and it doesn't deserve to bear the weight of any of this. Adrienne sits down next to me. She doesn't say anything for a while. Then she says, "You want me to start on these dishes?" I say, "Yeah." She says, "Deshaun, you're on the collard greens pot." He says, "Already on it." She turns on music. Low, something from the 90s, something our mothers played. She finds the serving spoons and starts wrapping what's left of the cornbread. Deshaun runs water in the sink, and I cry. Not loudly, not the shattering kind. Just the real kind. The kind that comes from deep in the chest, from the place where you've been keeping everything compressed for 6 weeks. And when the compression is finally released, the body just does what it needs to do. I cry for the marriage I believed I was in, for the woman I was when I agreed to be in it, for the years I spent making myself smaller and calling that love. I cry because revenge, when it actually arrives, does not feel like what you thought it would feel like. It feels like the aftermath of something that had to happen, necessary and exhausting and true. Adrienne reaches over and puts her hand over mine on the table. She doesn't tell me it's okay. She doesn't tell me it will get better. She just puts her hand over mine and she lets me feel what I feel. That is enough. The living room is terracotta now. A deep, warm terracotta that catches the afternoon light and holds it differently at different hours of the day. Orange in the early afternoon, something closer to rust by evening, and in the mornings when the sun comes in at an angle, it looks almost like fire. I painted it myself over a long weekend in February with help from my college friend Marcus, a different Marcus, one who has never cost me anything. And we played music too loud and ate pizza on the floor at midnight. And I thought about the gray walls I lived inside for 6 years and felt painting over something I had been tolerating, the specific satisfaction of covering what was wrong with what you actually want. The bedroom is deep sage green. There are plants on every surface, a pothos trailing from the top of the bookshelf, a peace lily by the window that has bloomed twice already, a snake plant I have somehow not killed despite my historic inability to keep plants alive, which I am choosing to read as a sign of something. The fiddle leaf fig from Christmas night is in the kitchen window. It is doing fine. I kept it because I did. The divorce was finalized on the 3rd Tuesday of February. Constance Okafor is very, very good at her job. The prenuptial agreement was voided on the grounds of adultery, which the documented evidence made uncontestable. We proceeded under Georgia marital property law. I retained full equity in the Buckhead house, which I own outright now. No Terrence on the title. No conversation needed before I make a decision about a piece of furniture or a paint color. I received a significant portion of the investment accounts accumulated during the marriage. I received the equity on the down payment that my grandmother's inheritance funded, which the voided prenup would have erased. Terrence did not fight any of it. Constance said he came to the settlement table looking, in her words, like a man who had done a thorough accounting of what fighting it would cost him and decided he couldn't afford the price. He took his personal accounts, his car, his firm partnership track, and removed himself. He moved to a corporate apartment in Midtown. I hear from shared professional acquaintances, the network Terrence cultivated that I always sat adjacent to, but never fully entered, that the Harrison Street development project is under administrative review, pending the investigation that Patricia Webb's documentation initiated. I do not know what will come of it, and I do not spend much time thinking about it. That belongs to Patricia now, and to the legal processes she is better equipped to navigate than I am. Simone Garrett left Atlanta in January. Forsyth Design Group did not renew her employment contract. The circumstances made them sufficiently uncomfortable that they did not, it turned out, need to be told directly. The professional network communicated what it needed to communicate, and the firm made a practical decision. She relocated. I do not know where. Patricia Webb filed for divorce from Marcus Webb in late February. The filing is public record. She is seeking full custody of their 3 children and a substantial share of marital assets. She has the kind of attorney who operates the way Constance operates. through preparation so thorough that trial is rarely necessary. I hope she gets everything she is asking for. I sent a brief note through her attorney's office after I saw the filing. I did not say much, just that I hoped she was finding solid ground. Her attorney sent back a courtesy acknowledgement that told me nothing specific and communicated, I think, everything it needed to. Here's what I do now. I reopened my event consulting business in the third week of January, small by choice. I'm not trying to rebuild what I was before I was married, because that person, that version of my professional life, is 6 years behind me, and I am a different woman now with different capacities and different interests. I am building what comes next, which is its own thing. 3 clients in January, 5 in February. In April, I have a gala for a nonprofit that provides workforce training for women leaving incarceration, the kind of event where the mission matters and the work matters, and the dinner is in service of something real. And I wake up in the mornings before it thinking about the details, not with dread, but with the particular forward-leaning energy of a project that I am genuinely invested in. I run 5 miles every morning. Through the neighborhood I lived in for 6 years as something adjacent to myself. I know the streets differently now. I know the names of 2 of my neighbors. The woman 2 doors down walks her dog at the same time. I leave the house every morning, and last month she stopped, and we talked for 15 minutes, and I learned. Her name is Charlene. She has been on this street for 9 years. She makes her own hot sauce and gives jars of it to people at Christmas. And she asked if I was settling in, and I said I was finally starting to feel at home. And she said, about time. That felt like something. Just knowing the name of someone on my own street. Knowing she noticed I was here. My mother calls every Sunday. She does not say, I told you so, because she is not that kind of woman. What she says most Sundays is, you sound like yourself. And I understand that this is the same thing, stated differently. I heard from 3 women through the online support forum in the months after Christmas. Someone had shared something I wrote in the forum, a long post about the process, about what worked and what I wish I had known earlier, about the specific importance of reading every page of a prenuptial agreement before you sign it. And it had reached people I would never have expected to reach. I talked to all 3 of them. I connected one with Renee and one with Constance. The third one I simply stayed on the phone with for 2 hours, because sometimes what a person needs is not resources. It is someone who will say, plainly, you are not making this up, you are not too sensitive, you are not crazy, and there is a way through. She called me 3 weeks after that conversation to tell me she had retained an attorney. She called me again in March to tell me she had moved into her own apartment. She texted me at 7 in the morning the first day she woke up there. First morning. I cried the whole drive. I keep looking around like someone's going to tell me I have to leave. But I'm here. Thank you. I read that text sitting in my terracotta living room with my first cup of coffee, the morning sun coming through the windows and landing on the deep blue walls of the hallway, on the plants, on the art I chose because I wanted it, and not because someone approved it. And I thought about my grandmother pressing a tablecloth with a travel iron and saying, when you feed people well, Deja, they know you're in charge. I thought about 9 place settings and the good china and the fiddle leaf fig on the kitchen windowsill. I thought about what Terrence said to me on a Thursday evening in November. Be gracious. I was. I got up and I called her back. She has a long road ahead of her. They all do. I know what the long road looks like. The mornings that are harder than expected. The grief that arrives at strange times and for things you thought you had already finished grieving. The work of rebuilding a self that was quietly disassembled over years and does not come back all at once. But I also know what the other side of it looks like. It looks like terracotta walls and a sage green bedroom and a peace lily blooming in the window. It looks like running 5 miles in the morning toward something instead of away from everything. It looks like answering the phone when another woman calls, because you know what she is asking before she finishes asking it, and you know that the answer is yes. Yes, you can get through this. Yes, you have options. Yes, someone will sit on the phone with you for as long as it takes. Terrence called me manageable. He called me gracious, and by gracious he meant compliant, and by compliant he meant controlled, and by controlled he meant safe. Safe for him, contained, a person whose limits he had measured and found comfortable. He was wrong about all of it. I am gracious. But gracious has always meant something different than what he thought. Gracious means I know how to take care of a room. I know how to feed people well. I know how to plan every detail so that when the moment comes, everything lands exactly right. I am gracious, and I have never been more dangerous. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.